As you all know, we started a process back in May when Gary Vogt announced that he was going to be leaving. And Mitchell Johnson and the entire search team did a fantastic job over the next several months going through all of the folks who would be interested in this job. As you know, if you don't already know, you should know that the Arkansas Electric Cooperative CEO job is one of the top jobs in the nation. We get a lot of qualified people that come along the pike, and they want to be our CEO. Duane Highley survived that process and actually thrived in it, as I'm told. Did a great job with all of our team of search committee, and we are honored to have Duane in our presence today. He's just moved in with his family this past week. I think he's told me last night that he's not really very settled yet at his new home out here in West Little Rock because of hard to find the sock drawer. But you guys, he was working the room hard last night. I know most of you met him, and I know you're going to be impressed with him. He's going to give us some of his vision of where we ought to go. Let me just tell you a couple things he might not tell you about himself. Duane comes from Associated Electric Co-ops up in Springfield, Missouri, where he's been, I think, most of his professional career. He was a senior planning engineer for them. He was a supervisor of resource planning, manager of the New Madrid power plant, and director of power production for Associated. And Associated is one of the big, good electric cooperative G&Ts that we have. He is a graduate of the Missouri University of Science and Technology, where he was an honors scholar in electrical engineer. So he is a double E, in case anybody remembers how hard that course was in college. A graduate of the University of Virginia Executive Program and Harvard's Business Advanced Management Program. And just on the personal side, he likes music, particularly guitars and motorcycles. So Duane, let's come up and give them your vision of the future of Arkansas. Thank you. Thank
you. How about them hogs? I tell you, following Carmi is a hard act, and I didn't think I'd be able to do very good with it. So thank you for that response on the how about them hogs. And Carmi, I heard you say something about that we're going to learn. I can't wait for this afternoon's program. We're going to learn about Arkansas culture. And I've, spent a lot of time in Missouri, and I was trained there that there was no such thing as Arkansas culture. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. And Christy, I want to thank you for the invocation, and I just think it's a wonderful privilege to work for an organization that has a priority to put God and country first. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Let's see, I got a clicker up here somewhere. As Carmi said, I'm 3 weeks into the job and still trying to figure out where my office is and where to park, and literally was this morning tearing open boxes saying, I know there's some black socks here somewhere. But I did find some clothes, and I'm proud to be here. Also, this thing about the rain, I am hoping that's a temporary thing, right? Somebody said this is like the season. You're going to be in rainy season till March. So we'll see about that. Now, I'm reminded from Christy's invocation, the scripture that says, God brings rain on the just and the unjust. So as I look across this room, I'm just wondering which of you are the just and which of you are the unjust. So I want to make sure I figure that out. And I was watching Lori's face last night. It's very good to have her with me, because I'd approach some of you directors and she'd have a very contented, peaceful look, and others she'd be really worried about me talking to you. So I'm using her as my barometer for this. So again, this is what I've spent the last week doing. That's the moving van, and I have successfully relocated from point A to point B, and very, very delighted to be a resident of Little Rock and a resident of Arkansas. I use the word delighted guardedly, because I know as a utility company CEO, and Doug White's sitting here grinning at me, you don't ever want to say delighted. Okay, that's a bad thing, but I am indeed delighted to be here. Now, in my office, and I meant to bring it with me, but just in all the confusion, I forgot. But if you ever visit me in my office, you'll see a rock on my desk, a stone. And that stone is there to remind me of something very important. It's an object lesson for me. So this is the rock. You can see it sitting there on a copy of the Arkansas Renewable Energy Plan, holding it down on my desk. The reason I keep this rock on my desk is because it's to remind me that you can't get the mountaintop experience, which is a delightful experience. You can't get the mountaintop experience unless you climb the mountain. And climbing the mountain is very hard. So one of the things I like to do is to climb mountains. Now, I don't do climbing mountains where you got to hammer things into the sheer rock face, and you're depending on your life for a rope. But if you can climb it with your hands and feet, I enjoy climbing mountains, and that's something I've done with my children as they've been growing up. So here we are on Mount Yale. And the thing about climbing a mountain is you can start off, and it seems like it's going to be so easy, and you can look at the summit and say, I think we're going to be there in an hour. And an hour later, you can look at the summit and say, I think we're going to be there in an hour. And sometimes an hour after that, you can still say, I think we're going to be there in an hour. But if you persevere, you eventually get to the top, and there's just nothing like that experience on top of the mountain. And the only way, you could drive to the top of a mountain, it wouldn't be the same. But when you climb a mountain, and so I want to remember that you don't get that experience, that exhilaration, unless you put in the effort. And I think that's a metaphor for where we are today in Arkansas, with Arkansas Electric Cooperative. And we're in the middle of a climb right now. Now, when I came here to Little Rock, my youngest son of 3 sons, I have 3 sons and a daughter, said, Dad, you need to climb Pinnacle Mountain. He himself had done this and understood it was kind of a rite of passage for welcoming you to Little Rock. So we go to Pinnacle Mountain on a Saturday. And I said, Colton, it looks like there's 2 paths. There's the east path and the west path. Well, he had already tried them both. She said, Dad, I think you find the west path more gratifying. Gratifying. That was an unusual choice of words because gratifying meant that was the harder route. And that was the steeper route. But indeed, we did make the summit, and the view was gorgeous. So that's him there, and I'll spare you the picture of me. A little bit about myself. I'm a dog person, not a cat person. That should tell you a lot. That's our dog, Ringo. Ringo is a girl, and she's a Border Jack, which means Border Collie Jack Russell Terrier. Also, though, more importantly, what you need to know about me is I'm a Willie Wired Hand guy, not a Ready Kilowatt guy. Okay? And growing up, I've always admired Willie, and I'm proud to be associated with him. And I never really got on board with the Touchstone Energy guys all that much. So I like Willie. Classic Willie. He's a good guy. Now, the thing I like about co-ops is because our mission is very simple and clear. We have one purpose, low-cost, reliable energy. Whether it's Associated Electric Cooperative in Missouri and Oklahoma, whether it's Arkansas Electric Cooperative here, it's the same mission. And I like the fact that we can sit in a room like this, and I can talk to you, the customer at the end of the line, the person who's paying the bill, and we have this perfect alignment. There's no argument like these guys over who gets the money or where's the profit go. It's one. We're aligned. And that's what's so good about working for the cooperatives. Now, as we look ahead in 2012, we have some challenges. And we're climbing this mountain. It's not easy. We've got the repurchase of Ellis, which is coming together, a financial transaction. Got the completion of the Turk plant. So that's been tough. It's been a long, hard climb. Got the potential for a rate increase. Nobody likes rate increases. I'm looking at the people who are paying the bill right now. I want you to know that we're going to apply the red-face test to every expense, which means if we couldn't stand in the boardroom and justify to you the money we're spending, we can't do it. We can't spend it. It's your money we're spending, and we certainly know that. With the new environmental rules, there's a possibility of environmental dispatch, which means taking the power plants and running them out of their merit order rather than running the cheapest plants first. We may have to run more expensive plants because they have lower emissions just to meet the nitrogen oxide emission limits. So that's a challenge facing it in the immediate future. And then, as you know, we're considering the possibility of a new generating resource, something that may not be needed right now, but may be a terrific bargain and a long-term benefit for this system. Also looking at things like wind power and renewables, and how can that fit? All these are actively under consideration, and it's part of that climb. We're trying to get to the summit. Now, you all know this guy, Casper the Friendly Ghost. He's up here to represent the cross-state air pollution rule. of EPA, because the Cross-State Air Pollution Rule acronym sort of looks like the word Casper. So some people have been calling it the Casper Rule. And that's just one of many EPA rules that are facing us now, and that have the potential for huge, huge impacts in your cost. If coal units have to be scrubbed, $800 million of additional cost for y'all, maybe as much as $1,500 per household you serve that has to be generated and repaid to fund that investment. That's a lot of money. And that impact swings on where the EPA rules go. We have a whole raft of other rules, 316B and regional haze, and all these have the same impact of potentially greatly increasing your costs or not, depending on how the regulation comes out and how the following court challenges come out. Now this guy, Shakespeare, let's imagine he said to scrub or not to scrub. That is the question, because that's the $800 million question, to scrub or not to scrub. Then we have natural gas here, which represents a possible fuel switching plan that's being discussed in the state of Arkansas, that the Public Service Commission is excited about, and the governor may have interest in, burning domestically produced fuels, meaning fuels from inside the state of Arkansas, and they don't mean lignite. They mean natural gas. And maybe putting incentives or disincentives to burn coal, which will just serve to raise your costs. And finally, the governor's energy plan. These are all challenges that face us during this next coming year, and things that your staff will be working hard on. We recently met with the chairman of the Public Service Commission, and Sandy was sharing with me that she had made the statement that this map was an embarrassment for her, because this map shows the darker colored states are states that have some form of a renewable energy standard that requires a percentage of wind or biomass or solar to be part of the mix. Now here at Arkansas, y'all have gotten out ahead. You've been involved in renewables before it was popular. You were involved in renewables because it was the right thing to do. And you invested money before it was required in hydroelectric and in other renewables. And yet, we're told this might be a source of embarrassment that the state of Arkansas isn't shaded in. And I'd say it should be a source of pride, that we have flexibility to use the lowest cost supply of power in the state of Arkansas. It's not an embarrassment. But we're going to have to tell that story, and we have just the vehicle to do it. Not only all of you and all of your boards and the Arkansas Living magazine, it's an opportunity to tell our story and avoid this, which is the greatest risk we face in the coming year. It's the risk of a stroke of a pen. Because all these things I've described, the environmental regulations, the renewable energy plan, the possibility of a fuel switching plan, all depend on the stroke of a pen, and that's why they're so hard to control. Because some regulator or a governor can make a decision and sign an order, and we're subject to those costs. And then later, a judge, as a result of a lawsuit, can sign a different order, and we may be subject to different costs. That pen risk is the single largest risk we face, but it's also a risk we can control. Because while we can't control the person who's driving the pen, we can prepare for those eventualities. We can have a robust system with a flexible and diverse fuel supply so that no matter what they choose to do, we'll be ready. Now, I was never a big fan of Bob Dylan. And I imagine some of you weren't either, although I'm becoming a better fan. But I do think he was one of America's great philosophers. And he had a statement which I love, which tells us where we are now, and that is this: you've always got to be prepared, but you never know for what. And that's where we stand, and that's why I'm talking about the possibility of new resources, the possibility of wind resources, maybe that we don't even need today, but it helps us be prepared for what we don't know, that pen risk. These changes sound bad, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. They're not good, and rate increases are not good, but with these changes, there are going to be some great opportunities. Energy efficiency and smart grid might be things that we're going to come out of this governor's energy plan. If we can steer it the way we want to, we could have the opportunity for additional funding for those to help our member owners more. As we move into day 2 markets, that's a threat with SPP and the Midwest ISO, possibly. But it's also an opportunity to participate in a broader market and to sell energy to a greater and larger audience and achieve the highest possible price for that energy. So day 2 markets aren't necessarily bad. They can be good if you're ready to play in them. And finally, the joining Entergy going into MISO versus SPP, and this thing that I've struggled to name called the PCITSA. It's the, and Ricky, can you help me? The PC part? Power Coordination Integrated Transmission Service Agreement. I'm learning it. It's like this thick. This is the agreement that dictates how Arkansas Electric schedules generating resources and uses transmission of energy to deliver to your member owners. And this agreement has been in place since the 70s, Ricky? 78. It's served this cooperative extremely well, but we know it's coming to an end. And that could be a bad thing or it can be a good thing, depending on how it comes out. And I'm saying this, we have the power to influence that in a way that it will be a good thing for Arkansas. And the time is right, with the possibility of new resources and with the possibility of renegotiation of this. In the light of all these other challenges, there is opportunity. And the reason why I know it's going to be good is because you have such a great staff. And could I ask now the staff members of Arkansas Electric that are present here today, please stand up for recognition from these directors. You have a great, great staff. And I've had the privilege, and this is, I'm not just saying this, but I got an upgrade coming to Arkansas. I've got a great staff here. Gary Vogt did a wonderful job, and I just get to be the recipient of that effort that he made to build such a strong and capable staff. And I know you all have confidence in them. I have confidence in them. As we go forward with this uncertainty and with these challenges, they are well qualified to meet these challenges, to negotiate those agreements, and to put you in a better position for long-term rate stability for our kids and our grandkids. And that's the decisions we're making here. We don't just look at tomorrow. We've got to look at what happens 10 years, 15, and 25 years from now. Development of new resources can take 10 years. This image here is just to remind you that that's the Arkansas boardroom, and we're not going to be meeting here tomorrow for the board meeting. When I took my son into this room, he said, "My gosh, it looks like the United Nations," which is pretty much true. And I'll leave you with this. Everybody knows what that is, right? A light socket, electric socket. And I wish, as an electrical engineer, I wish it hadn't been designed like this. And it could have been so simple if it just looked like this instead. Can you see the difference? Instead of that, this. I mean, of course it was an electrical engineer to design it that way, right? But if he had been thinking, or she, and had made it like this, because that's what we're all about. And wouldn't it be cool if electric cooperatives could have their own light socket that looked like this? Because we're about quality of life and making people's lives better. That's what we provide. We don't just provide electricity. We provide a better life for people. And I'm so proud to be part of that. And I know you are too. And I've talked to some of you that are new board members that have just joined this family, and I can tell the excitement that you have, and you recognize it's something special we have here at the cooperatives. We have the chance to make people's lives better. And I hear people on the East and West Coast talk about taxes on energy and say it's just $10 a month. And they don't live where we live. Because $10 a month for some of our folks is the difference between whether they're going to get to go out to eat or maybe where they can afford some of their medicines. That $10 a month is a big deal. And we're fighting for that, every last one of us. It's an important job, and we want to keep doing that. And so I thank you for that. I thank the previous boards. I want to thank Carl Willick, and I want to thank Harry Oswald, get the name right, because of all they've done to build this organization and all the boards that worked with them. So I'm grateful for that. As I travel around and meet some of you, there are people who have said, "You must be pretty excited. You've got a high-powered job." And, you know, working in the electric power business, we all have high-powered jobs, don't we? We all get to represent people and help make their lives better. Well, don't want any of you to forget, and it's the message that Christy started us with, is that we all actually work for a higher power. And it's not the one you plug into the wall, that it comes from a better source. So make sure you remember that as you're working with your member owners. That's our purpose. That's what we're all about. I'm proud to be here and proud to be part of this system. Thank you all so much.